My name is Elena Buffalo Spirit. I'm a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe, the Sutta branch. I grew up along this Ton River as a child. When I started school, I didn't know how to speak English. After I learned about the proposed coal trains coming through our lands, the proposed Otter Creek coal mine, I became proactive. So I traveled to Washington, D.C. with the Northern Plains Resource Council, and we lobbied the senators representing Montana, Idaho, and Washington State on the proposed coal trains. And we explained to them that this coal, where is it going to go? We understand and we hear bits and pieces that it might be shipped from Montana, Idaho to Washington to the ports and then on to Asia. And we don't agree with that. The destruction that it's going to cause a lot of not only Indian lands, but all the towns and cities between southeastern Montana to the Washington coast. We learned about these things that are going to destroy many people's lives and land.
My name is Hoem. I was born and raised in the copper mining town of Butte, Montana. My grandfather was a miner from Cornwall, and he came over here about the 1880s. My own stint in the mines was fairly brief and right out of high school before they started doing the open pit mining in Butte. We're not strangers in Montana here to what it takes for the finding and the getting of mineral wealth, and the cleanups that are usually left behind, the Superfund sites. Montana also has vast deposits of coal, particularly in the southeast corner of the state, down in the Powder River Basin area. Coal has always been a source of conflict in this region between the agricultural interest and the coal industry. A lot of the controversy revolved around water, or its availability and its quality. Most recent conflict concerning coal came about as the coal industry sought to ship its coal to foreign markets in Asia particularly. They were losing ground to natural gas, cleaner and cheaper fuel. These most recent plans involved also opening up deposits in the Otter Creek and Tongue River area, located just east of the Battle of the Little Bighorn site, where the Sioux and the Northern Cheyenne defeated General Custer and his troops. The current plan has sparked considerable resistance and protests all along the rail lines. And also there's protests going on in China. As these protests evolved, it became pretty clear to us that not very many people had actually seen the country where this coal was to be coming from, the Otter Creek, Tongue River, Powder River Basin areas. So we basically decided to get in a truck, bring a camera, and see what was out there. The notion was that if you can see a place, maybe you'll know it a little better, and maybe you'll care about it a little more.
We're standing here on this beautiful land that is the ancestral land of my people, the Tistas, Sutta, the Northern Cheyenne Nation. And from the exit that we took from 212 all the way down 15 miles, as far as I know, is the proposed Otter Creek coal mine, which I hope will never come in, because as you can see behind us, this land is gorgeous. It's beautiful. Who wants to ruin this? One of the last frontiers of America is right here.
It's spectacularly beautiful country. What's colorful in places is rather reddish stripes running horizontally across the hills. Turns out that where they're properly exposed, those reddish stripes are at the tops of the coal beds. So why coal in Montana, especially in the Powder River Basin in eastern Montana? Something like 55, 60 million years ago, about the time of the dinosaurs, there were rivers flowing into an inland sea, swamps full of vegetation, gradually built up old deposits of peat. When you put enough pressure on it, squeeze out more and more of the water, and it gradually transforms into the relatively low-grade coal which we have in eastern Montana.
If you look at the map and where this coal is going to come from in the Powder River Basin, there's two main routes that will go through Montana, starting up from Sheridan and then splitting off to a northern route that'll go up by Glacier Park, and a southern route that'll travel through Missoula. These routes converge in Sandpoint, Idaho, and then travel to ports in Oregon and in Washington. And then, of course, all the way across the Pacific Ocean to ports in Asia.
One of the interesting facets of history is time and the duration. I mean, we're dealing with numbers that are hard to comprehend. For instance, the Earth is approximately 4.6 billion years old, and our lifespans are 70 years. The formation of coal and oil and so forth started about 600 million years ago. And it was a freak of nature this stuff was ever preserved, and we will go through the oil in about 200 years, and for coal it'll be a bit longer.
Okay, we're on my ranch here on the Tongue River, and the railroad original route wanted to go across about 3 miles of my ranch, so they want to put a big, huge cut through there, and then, so basically they're going a straight line across my place. Basically what that does to my ranch is that the cattle can't get to the river for water. It basically separates everything, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to just put culverts through the grade that the cattle were supposed to pass through. But when a cow comes up to a culvert, she looks at it and she sees the hole, and it looks like it's only this big, you know, and she thinks, I can't go through that, I'm going to get stuck. So the coal bed methane's coming. Then if we get, you know, the Otter Creek mine getting developed, and they want to discharge water down, you know, or you know, some of the water that comes into the pit, if they take it down and add it to the salinity that's already in the tongue, and it'll just harm us even more.
If you fly into Wyoming from the Midwest or from the east, you're flying in and you see rivers and lakes continually. Once you get here, you don't have that water anymore, and people don't realize how fragile the water situation can be here. Montana has still got it, and you've got some beautiful country up there, but once you get through and you run through a coal mine, there isn't very much there. I mean, they can talk about all the reclamation and things that they can do. There's a lot of things that aren't going to bring back. And whenever you're taking things that belong by right to your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and other generations, whether it's oil or it's coal, it's a depletable mineral. And whenever it's depleted, it's gone.
And they keep pumping out all the water for their use and to get to the coal. And of course the methane industry did the same thing, pump the water out so they can get the methane out. Our water is just going, and without water we can't ranch. This is bothering me quite a lot.
The mineral industries definitely will pay a large part of the taxes. Look at how much the companies have taken out of the area. And over here, this Salt Creek oil field north of Casper, what's left there would hardly make a decent ghost town.
But Wyoming, of course, is so in the pocket of the energy industry. Whatever the energy industry wants in this state, they get. They get incentives, they get tax breaks, they get whatever they want.
We keep hearing about all the jobs that are going to be created by mining the coal in eastern Montana. Well, mining and transportation, these things are all becoming less labor intensive. They're all done by big machines and by computers, and so we just see fewer and fewer jobs associated with these industries. And that's the way of the future, because labor costs you money.
My name's Bill Ritchie, and I worked for years in the coal mining industry. Best people I've ever worked with in my probably 30 or 40 years in business. They're well motivated, they work hard, and they're working to feed their families and provide opportunities for their kids. You couldn't ask for anything more American than that. Thought we were doing really great work. We were trying to replace the high sulfur eastern coal with huge quantities of low sulfur coal. They're in an industry where we've learned more and more about the product and the byproducts of burning coal. And instead of being the blessing of lowering the sulfur that we're putting into the atmosphere, we're finding out that the greenhouse gases, the mercury that comes off and the CO2, is having a very disastrous effect on our world. We're seeing increases in asthma, we're seeing increases in cancers in kids. Putting more arsenic and mercury into the environment makes no sense at all.
My name's Paul Smith. I'm a pediatric pulmonologist here at Community Medical Center. I take care of children that have lung disease, both as outpatients and in the intensive care unit. And we're concerned because the numbers of those children are increasing, the severity of their disease is increasing. And I believe children are the canaries in the coal mine for our environment. They really are the most sensitive ones to the effects of air pollution on lung growth for several reasons. They're in the act of development. They breathe more air per pound. They are more active and are much more risk of getting sick. Asthma nationally is increasing and has been increasing over the last 40 to 50 years. The severity of asthma is increasing and has been increasing. Rates of asthma in Montana really are not much different than the other states in the United States. So you would think with our more pristine environment and cleaner air that we would be seeing less asthma. And when I was a child, I don't remember kids in my classrooms having asthma. And now with a rate of 1 in 12, that means every class is going to have 2 or 3 asthmatic children. So all of your children's friends are going to know somebody that has asthma. And certainly coal is contributing to air pollution. And then the increases in carbon within our air causing climate change that are affecting our air quality in secondary ways. With climate change, we're having more forest fires. We have warmer days. The warmer your day is, the more your ozone exposure and the increased number of smog days. And so coal pollution does contribute to detriments in lung health.
Over half of all the hazardous air pollutants are directly from coal, and this has huge impacts on human health. So we know that this is causing 4 out of the 5 of the leading causes of death in the United States. So heart disease, lung disease, cancer, as well as strokes. I mean, it's much more pervasive. We used to think, oh yeah, burning coal, that causes lung cancer, just don't get too near it. But now we realize it has incredible effects. Another problem that we're seeing is a lot of dust storms that are arising because of the heat and the dry soil. We'll see this actually around coal plants where they've done, or around the mining sites where they do a lot of strip mining, where now you have huge areas of exposed dirt. And this exposed dirt, again, is laced with arsenic, it's laced with lead, with cadmium, with mercury, and it's aerosolized. when coal is burned, contaminating the fish, and people are eating the fish and having huge mercury exposures. And we're finding out now that probably 500,000 children in the United States have mercury exposure that will cause permanent neurologic damage. These are the costs that we say are external, so people don't really think about them. But when you look at the cost in disease for humans, as well as loss of our planet, it adds up to billions of dollars.
In the long run, the marketing and selling and mining of more coal is going to produce jobs, but most of it's going to be in the healthcare industry, as we struggle to deal with the problems caused by putting those pollutants into the air. The big difficulty with the coal mining industry is the product is poison. We've encountered the same thing in the tobacco industry, where we finally started getting wise in this country and tobacco use started going down. We've taxed the heck out of it, but the benefits of taking it down are trying to be overcome by the industry by selling abroad. The exact same scenario. And taking something that poisons Americans and sending it abroad is not an answer that I find to be morally acceptable. The problem also with coal is the pollution's coming right back at us on the jet stream. So it's not even like selling cigarettes where we just poison the people in the country that we sell it in.
I'm Dennis O'Donnell, a emeritus professor of economics and Asian studies at the University of Montana. I was also the professor of modern Asian affairs in the Mansfield Center, and have recently worked in China on a project with the Foreign Affairs College at the highest level with the Chinese government. There is a history in China which is long-standing, 30 centuries, and built into the Chinese conception of well-being. It is called the Mandate of Heaven, Tianming, which gave the rulers of China the authority and legitimacy to rule based on their ability to govern. Historically, the loss of the Mandate of Heaven led to the collapse of governance and regime change. This is as powerful as the concept of democracy in America, and to the Chinese, it persists today. Current environmental degradation in China due to massive air pollution from coal-based energy production is seen as a major failure of the central government to increase the standard of living in China. Air pollution is tangible, and the people of China can see the success or failure of government policy in their immediate lives. In response to their pollution crisis, China recently announced its intention to set a cap on carbon dioxide emissions, starting with the 2016 5-year plan, as the Mandate of Heaven dictates. This follows directly upon the EPA, United States, decision to go ahead and implement stricter CO2 emissions. In May of this year, China and Russia signed a deal where for 30 years they will guarantee for $400 billion of investment China a single source of natural gas. This is designed to produce energy for China and replace coal. The Chinese already have a plan in place to stop coal imports. Coal development and transportation is becoming a risky investment for Montana.
We're above a bike bridge on the train tracks in Missoula. I guess the visceral emotion I had when I actually saw trains full of coal heading to Asia. And I see these every day as I come to work on my bike. I see these coal trains going by. The local impact of having dozens of these coal trains go through small communities smaller than Missoula, estimates being projected are 20 to 40 trains a day, are just incredibly disruptive to these small communities. It may be a public safety issue if someone needs to get to the hospital and they're blocked by a coal train at an intersection. And it certainly is a noise and dust pollution issue all day, every day, as these trains rumble through town.
I'm a part-time resident of Lopez Island in the San Juan Islands, and
I can tell you from my perspective how people are very concerned about this. If you look at the whole picture of coal, I mean, if we destroy the climate to the point where sea level rises, and Seattle and the cities along the west coast of Washington will be affected, and the further south you go, the worse they'll be affected. Real major concern for us and people on the west coast is the ships, these huge ships colliding with other ships and other people. We have a lot of foggy weather, rainy weather, stormy weather, and so you combine that with all the tanker traffic we have now, and we could have some really bad situation.
Nothing upriver is as treacherous as the fearsome waters at its mouth, the Columbia River Bar, where the force of 1,200 miles of powerful river collides with the might of the Pacific Ocean. Mountainous swells, thunderous breaking waves, violent seas made even wilder by winter storms. Still, as maritime traffic multiplies, and sophisticated navigational aids are commonplace, the mighty Columbia at times is no less dangerous than William Clark's description in 1805. The immense seas and waves roar, and this roaring has continued 24 days. Its waters are foaming and perpetually break with immense waves, tempestuous and horrible.
Carbon dioxide prevents a lot of the sun's energy from escaping back into the outer atmosphere and out into space. If we see an increase in carbon dioxide, we see an increase in temperature in the Earth's atmosphere. If we look at this chart, it's a plot of carbon dioxide in parts per million versus number of years ago. This is warm. This is cold. This is actually the Ice Age. And then it warms up for an interglacial, goes back down into the next Ice Age, rises and falls, and so on. Cycles roughly 100,000 years apart. In May of 2013, 400 parts per million. And look at the trajectory of carbon dioxide and hence temperature. We have a big problem in climate change.
It really is no issue at all that if humanity does not stop burning coal, we can never get on top of the climate change issue. Coal is the single biggest carbon emission of everything we do, and so we really have no choice. If we're ever going to be serious about stopping climate change, the single biggest thing we have to do is quit burning coal.
Heat kills people, and it kills people from whatever their chronic disease is or whatever problems. It makes it much, much worse. In 2003, when they had the incredible heat event in Europe, 70,000 people died. In Russia in 2010, over 65,000 died.
We're not seeing any real decline in annual precipitation. But what's triggering our droughts now are the higher temperatures that simply evaporate more water over a longer period of time faster. What we're seeing is the winter period shortening by a few weeks, but that summer drought period in like manner being extended. Wildfire and low stream flow, high stream temperatures, all those things kick in to play over a longer period of the summer than was the case 50 years ago. In Montana here, our ecosystems really live on our snowpack. Our summer rainfall is really quite small and sporadic. The spring growing season initiates a couple weeks earlier, but it also means that the system runs out of water in our arid environment earlier in the summer, and that's when drought stress starts, which aids things like beetle kill epidemics, and when the wildfire season starts. The wildfires are a tremendous detriment to our tourism. People go somewhere else when they read that Montana's on fire. I really am worried about our late season trout fishing and river recreation, because the rivers really just simply run out of water all too often in August and September before the fall rains come. The ski areas end up closing earlier. The ice fishing and snowmobiling and all those winter time recreation are just a couple weeks less of the season.
This is the most famous photograph ever taken. It's called the Blue Marble, and of course it was taken by astronauts on their way to the moon several years ago. If you're an astronomer, it's a dot, and it's fragile. It reminds me of a Christmas ornament. The one thing that I think would strike any space traveler who arrived here for the first time would just be the tremendous richness and diversity of life on the planet. And as far as we know, this is the only place where certain life exists. And then you wonder, well, how well are we treating it? And all this web of life that's all connected. And the answer is, if you think back to what we've done in just a blink of an eye, a couple hundred years out of a history that is measured in the billions, we've changed the chemical composition of the atmosphere and the oceans to a considerable extent. Of course, that's led to warming of the whole planet, melting of the ice fields wherever they are, raising of the sea level, feeding storms now that have all become superstorms that are more frequent and more severe than anything we're accustomed to for a long time. So it's had consequences, and as soon as you introduce changes like that, naturally it's going to change the conditions under which life can exist. And in some places, and for some species, it's going to change it so much that the life that has been there a long time can't exist. And right now we're guilty of imposing extinctions, about 30,000 a year. So we're on a dangerous path that's even immoral if you think that we're deciding what can live on a planet.
I wish this country would get on the renewable bandwagon, because I think that is the way to go. We have really good wind in Wyoming. It's steady. And then of course solar. I mean, Lord, this is one of the western states that gets over 300 days of sunshine a year. They have more in one little state in Germany than this entire country has. So my hope for the future is that coal will become a thing of the past and that renewables will be the future.
So, is there any hope? And of course, our tremendous intelligence, and so we can certainly learn to handle our planet with more care than we've been putting into it so far. Second thing we have is this tremendous creativity. And there's nothing more renewable, in fact it's infinitely expandable, is the creativity and imagination and knowledge base that humans can create. And then we do have a strong sense of moral purpose, I think, that you should treat others as you would wish they would treat you. And I guess the point I'm trying to say is those others don't just have to be humans, they can be other species as well, and they don't have to all be born yet. So we have to think ahead to things that are happening beyond our own lifetimes.
I am a journalist, not an environmentalist. I got into this issue because I learned that the coal industry was paying some scientists under the table to say climate change isn't happening. And I said to myself, if there's this cover-up going on, what are they covering up? And there went the next 15 years of my life. So the impulse that propelled me into this work comes from a very deeply held belief on which I based a 30-year career, that in a democracy we need honest information on which to base our decisions. And in this case, some very powerful interests were stealing our reality. And I know in my bones and from all my experience that bodes very, very badly for the democracy. And it turns out it also bodes very badly for the planet as well.
In addition to stealing our reality, the climate skeptics are also withholding from the rest of us a huge surge of economic growth.
I think a global project to rewire the world with clean energy would begin to pacify the climate as well as jumpstart a worldwide economic boom. One such possible plan has three elements. First, industrial countries would withdraw all subsidies from fossil fuels and put those same subsidies behind clean, non-carbon energy sources. Second, we need to create a fund to transfer clean energy to developing countries. Finally, the nations of the world need to adopt a mandatory carbon efficiency standard that goes up by 5% a year. I firmly believe that regardless of the details, a plan of this magnitude would create millions and millions of jobs, especially in developing countries. It would turn impoverished and dependent nations into trading partners. It would raise living standards abroad without compromising ours, and in a very short time, it would jump the renewable energy industry into a central driving engine of growth of the global economy. Finally, I do believe that a coordinated global project to rewire the world with clean energy could be the first step toward peace. Peace among people and peace between people and nature.
If we don't speak out, who's going to do that for our grandchildren?
Oh, the ground it shook and the diesels roared, that horn split the cloudy sky. We were standing by the tracks on the riverbank, my little boy and I. First he stared in fear and he grabbed my hand, then excitement filled his eyes as he asked, "Daddy, what can that be?" "It's just a train rolling westward in the rain, 10 dozen cars. Don't they all look the same? She's going loud and fast to the end of the track to empty that load, then head on back. Them trains, they built this country, son, and I smiled like you when I first saw one. I could tell you about all the good they done, but boy, it's just a train." The wheels, they squealed as she picked up speed, and we took a few steps back. Then the whistle blew and the gray dust flew as the train raced up the track. We counted the cars piled high with heavy, shiny rocks of black. My boy said, "Daddy, what can that be?" "It's just some coal someone dug out of a hole. Don't look like much, but some folks think it's gold. It's going down the river where a ship will be, loaded up by morning, headed out to sea. Makes no sense, I've heard some say. Doesn't matter anyway, it won't be missed after today, 'cause boy, it's just some coal." Then he looked at me and he shook his head. He said, "Dad, I don't understand. If they dig a hole and they strip the coal, what happens to the land?" "Well, it's just some land, mostly grass and streams and sand and rolling hills. Some old fences made by hand." But then I thought to myself as I looked at my son, was this world not made for everyone? Don't we share the air, the earth, the sea? What will life be like when he's grown like me? Then the sky grew dark and rolled with thunder. What God joined together, I couldn't help but wonder if maybe man should praise, not plunder. And we walked home in the pouring rain. It's just some land, it's just some coal. It's just a train. It's just some land. It's just some coal. It's just a train.